Welcome everybody. Welcome to this EAE Master Talk, sorry. The name of the masterclass is gonna be Enhance Your Business Analytics Skills. This is in the context of the MIT experience that will happen in Boston next year, provided by the EAE International MBA. So here we are today to talk about a very interesting topic, which is the intersection between business and technology, which is business analytics. And in order to do that, I have a very interesting guest today who is someone that is very, very knowledgeable on this topic. He's one of the greatest minds in this, according to the world and the internet, basically. And we're going to be discussing several topics on that. So here is David. He doesn't need that much of introduction, but anyway, I am gonna give it. So basically, he's the head of the MIT Data Science Lab. He's also the professor of engineering of systems at MIT. He has been the editor-in-chief of several research journals like Management Science, Operational Research, Naval Research Logistics, and he, on top of that, he has been founding and co-founding several companies, which have some of them acquired by bigger companies like Accenture or IBM. So it's a pleasure for me to introduce you to David. So welcome, David.
Thank you, Gustavo. Great to be here with you.
Good. So let's start. I think this is a very interesting moment to have this conversation. I think the world of data have been very trending for many years, more than a decade, almost 2 decades, I would say. And we have seen many things changing from visualizations to big data to artificial intelligence, etc. But the adoption of all these technologies around around the world and the companies in this period of time has not been very steady. Usually, it's very correlated with specific things that happen in the world. Because when something that is out of your hands happen, usually you need to react. And this reaction means like, hey, I need to take a decision very fast. I need to optimize my cost. I need to understand what's happening in the world, so I need more data, etc., etc. So when these kind of things happen, there is this boom of adoption of the technology in organizations. So I think for the last 4 or 5 years, we have lived this very big amount of things happening in the world. We can talk about international conflicts all around the world. We can talk about supply chain problems, the chip problems, the problem with the Suez Canal. We have a pandemic. We have just too many things that I think that they are really making companies like turn around and say like, hey, data is a must. So on your perspective, how do you see this impacting the adoption of technology, all these conflicts in organizations?
Great question. There are a couple of trends that we see right now that we need to focus on. The first, as you mentioned, is disruption is everywhere. From COVID to Suez Canal to weather disruptions, all of these force companies to more and more invest in supply chain resiliency. That's one important trend that is clearly affecting companies and businesses. The second one is all a trend around high interest rate. High interest rate both affect consumer behavior, but also affect the cost in businesses, the cost in supply chain. It affects the cost of goods produced. It affects the cost of material purchase. It affects the cost of energy. It affects the cost of transportation. And the third one, the third trend, is all about changes in the labor market. After COVID, we saw people departing the labor market. If you think about the first trend, which is all disruption, it's forcing companies to focus on resiliency. The second trend, the high interest rate, forcing companies to focus on efficiency. And the third trend is forcing companies to focus on productivity. The only way to address all these conflicting challenges is to emphasize the role in data and analytics. And data is everywhere. Companies are endowed with huge amount of data. Some of it is structured, a lot of it is unstructured, text, images, videos. The key is to take advantage of data that companies have together with external data that complement our understanding of consumers and suppliers and use three different capabilities provided by analytics. And let's highlight the three different capabilities. The very first one is predictive. I want to use data and analytics to predict what will happen in the future. The second is prescriptive. Not only I want to predict, I want to use data and analytics to make decisions that will generate value to my organization. Personalized offering, supply chain decisions, procurement decisions, investment decisions. I want to use data and analytics to make decisions to provide value to my business. That's the second element. And these two have been around for quite some time. The third one is relatively new. The third one appeared only in the last 2 to 3 years, and that's generative. I want to use data and analytics to automate decision-making processes because I can do that. I can respond quickly, I can respond accurately, and I can increase productivity in my business. These trends, both the challenges, disruption, the cost of money, high interest rate, labor market is changing, uh, can be only addressed when companies take advantage of data and analytics to improve business and supply chain performance.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Very, very interesting, David. Uh, Talking about that, actually, the thing and what it's very challenging from a point of view for the organizations is that all the different business cases that you're talking about are solved with different, let's say, data practices or data technologies. It's not one for everything. As you said, there is lately the generative AI trend that will solve some of the things, but then in many cases you need things that now they are called traditional AI, which for me it's very interesting to hear it as traditional AI. But also, there are many times that what you need is actually just a good dashboard to analyze your sales, for example. And if you start listening to, for example, different vendors, they will tell you no, but you will also need a very a very good data quality tool and also a data observability tool. But also you cannot do that if you don't have a very good tool for data governance. And also if you don't have and you start seeing that there are just so many different practices and tools that you have to take in account in order to build something that I know that there are many companies that feel a bit lost and they have limited budget and they have to think about where to put it and many of them they hear generative AI and they go there, but is that really what they need? How do you think companies should approach this in terms of which practices or which technologies should they go for?
This is a very important question that you typically hear more and more for companies, exactly because the landscape of technologies is enormous. The approach that I take is to start not from the technology, rather to start by identifying pain points. Identify where are the challenges in your business. Once you identify where are the challenges in your business, you want to make sure that you identify the appropriate processes that can address the challenges. The challenges maybe service level is low. The challenges maybe our cost is just too high. The challenges maybe that we are starting to lag behind the competition. Once you identify the challenges, the pain point, and the processes, then there are multiple solutions that you may um, use, each for a specific process and for an individual pain point. What you want is to rank all these opportunities based on at least two dimensions. The first is the complexity, how easy or difficult it is to do the analysis, to implement a solution. And the second is what is the value to the organization? You don't want to start with a process, with a strategy that is very complex, very difficult to implement, even if the value is high. What you want is to start with a strategy where you can implement relatively quickly to provide value. And based on the values that you receive from this phase, you can generate the next phase, which is the second wave of opportunities. So the way to think about where to start and what to invest in, think about the different opportunities, rank them by complexity, rank them by value, start simple to generate value, to build confidence, to show impact, and take advantage of the value generated to go to the next wave, and from the next wave to the third wave, and so forth and so on.
Business before technology, no?
Exactly.
Yeah, but then it sounds always that easy until you start thinking about how to do this transformation, no? Because I have few months ago, I was invited to give a conference regarding transformation in supply chain, and we were talking about like inventory optimizations and forecasting, etc. And many of the challenges that we are facing today are still challenges that were like being faced by supply chain many years ago, and uh, and it's very interesting that even the technology is there, because now if you go to any conference, everybody start talking about that, about generative AI and how generative AI will solve all the problems in your life, and then how they have these super cool demos and vendors are showing super difficult things that are being solved by generative AI. Then you go back to the companies and organizations that you are very used to work, and you see the real situation of many of the market in general of companies, and they are not there. Many of them, they are still fighting to get like the right sales dashboard, no? So I when you think about it, at least from a point of view, it's because it is not just about technology. At the end, technology is there and it has been there and it's changing all the time, but then you have processes underneath, and the processes, well, are not that easy to change. You have a full structure based on that, and the processes are based on people, and people will also, they need, they need a change management, they need to get reskilled, they need many things. So at the end, and well, besides that, you have everything that has to do with regulations, no? Now the European Commission is bringing the new AI Act, which is going to regulate AI and generative AI, and it's not going to be the only one. Now we're going to have uh, several new regulations that will make companies go back and say like, okay, so before starting this project, I need to check if I can do this or not. So at the end, the distance between technology and the actual make it happen in the organization is very big. So how do you align all this puzzle in order to make a digital transformation in a company, for example?
This is, as you pointed out, Gustavo, is not a new question. It's a question that have been around for many, many years. In fact, a few years ago, I started collecting data from companies in multiple industries related to that question. And what I wanted to collect is information about the technologies that these companies have, the processes that they are using, and the business performance that the company reported. And here is what we found analyzing data from hundreds and hundreds of companies. You are not surprised by my findings that when companies do not have the right technology and do not have the right processes, they don't do very well, right? This was consistent in our data across the board, but this is not surprising. What you may be surprised is to see that companies that invested only in technology and did not change their processes to match the technology also did not do very well. On the other hand,
Okay.
companies that invested in processes but not in necessarily in technology did much better than the companies that invested only in technology. And of course, the best performer were those investing in technology and the appropriate processes to match with this technology. That has been true for many, many years. And so the idea that I just invest in technology, but I'm going to use my old process is not going to work. We will talk in a few minutes, I hope, about generative AI, and I will re emphasize this that if you start using generative AI, you need to rethink some of the processes.
Yeah, I am totally going to go to generative AI. If not, everybody in this webinar is gonna hate me. So of course I'm going there. But first, I want to ask you that exactly, because that's very interesting. Your point about like how to make it happen. No, I have seen a lot of very pretty uh, data strategy documents, like, 200 pages of amazing ideas, and then uh, big project charters that are talking about how to potentially in the middle term make it happen in a project. But then there are a lot of analysis showing that there are like a very big percentage of the projects that has to do related with data that they fail. And yes, in many cases it's because what you say, that they are not addressing the right problem or fully or not. But I think there is also a big part that has to do with methodologies. So the fact that you know what to do doesn't mean that you know how to do it. uh, I don't know if you have a take on that in terms of
Yeah,
the way of making things happen and methodologies.
yeah. This is not an easy question to answer. And there is no one size fits all strategy. A strategy, a methodology that work for one company does not necessarily work for another company. That's why I highlight two important elements. The first, Gustavo, is start small, add complexity later. Don't start with a huge, complex implementation because you are losing the trees from the forest. You will not know if there is a problem, where the problem is coming from. So start small, add complexity later. And when you do that, you want to test different strategies with offline data. Let's take an example of demand forecasting. People will tell you, oh, you can use this tool from this company, it will generate a reliable forecast. That may be true for one company, but may not be true for another. So, what we typically do, we take historical data, say data of sales over the last 5 or 7 years. We split it into two parts. One to represent historical data where I can train different analytics, and the other one is to represent the future. This is the testing. And we try different technologies to see which one generate effective prediction on the testing data. That means that we do all offline to identify the appropriate methodology. That does not guarantee that with new data it will work well, but it reduces the risk of starting and going in the wrong direction. So experimenting with historical data to make sure that the analytics, the method, the process works well is a very important part of implementation.
Okay, okay, and you just give me the right point to jump into generative AI, because at the end we will end up talking about data and data quality from my point of view, because I see as always, things like, for example, generative AI go very high in the hype cycle, and it reminds me a lot of like different other stages of the hype cycle of different practices. We can talk about normal AI or traditional AI, or we can talk about big data. But the thing is that generative AI, I do think that it's a very, very big thing, but right now I think that everybody's talking about generative AI as the only thing that will solve everything, even though from my point of view it's just one part of the full ecosystem that you have to manage in your organization. And the problem with that is that it it doesn't come like easy. You need the right data, not just the right amount, but the right quality. And it has a lot of risks in terms of privacy, in terms of security, in ethic. And everybody right now is trying to push for that. And I don't know how companies are really looking at this. I saw many people putting a lot of budget into trying to make it work, but I am still hesitant if they it's that really where they should be putting the money, you know? So I would like to hear about your take on that.
Yeah. So generative AI is an area that my data science lab has been focusing on for the last couple of years, even before this was very exciting. And our class, the one that we will do next year, will focus in part on generative AI. It is a big opportunity, but there is a big confusion in the market about the opportunity and about generative AI, not understanding that AI and generative AI refer here, in our case, to two different capabilities. Let's start by explaining a little bit, Gustavo, about generative AI. Generative AI is part of what we call large language models. Large language models are all used to generate text that have the look and feel of text generated by human. This is what it's all about. Generative AI is all about generating text that have the look and feel of text generated by human. How can we use this, something whose objective is to generate text, for improving decision making? That's really the heart of Gen AI for businesses. And the amazing thing about Gen AI is that if you apply it correctly, you can use it to make specific supply chain, procurement, marketing, finance decisions. This does not mean removing the capabilities that you have in your organization. This implies complementing the capabilities you have in your organization with the technology that allows you to make decisions quickly. One implementation recently, minutes instead of weeks. Accurately, the machine does not make mistakes that I typically make. And with higher productivity. And the implementation that we are focusing on with generative AI is not like an ERP implementation. It's not like implementing and investing in a procurement platform. We are talking about technologies that can be implemented relatively quickly to help you take advantage of the capabilities that you have in your supply chain and make quick, accurate, and efficient decision in your business. That's what generative AI is all about. But to do that, now going back to some of the questions that you asked, to do that, you may need to adjust your processes. Remember, if you had a process without generative AI, you may not be using the same thing. You may need to adjust the skills of people in your organization because they need to be able to interact effectively with the technology. And you may find data gaps that you need to complement. These three elements, which is adjusting the processes, investing in skills, complementing the data that we have to make sure we have the best potential data to use in our processes are really the essential for successful Gen AI in business.
Okay, that's a good point. I actually am very interesting to hear that a bit further. We actually need to wrap this up. Uh, basically, thank you, David. Thank to everybody who is watching this. I really would encourage everybody who is interested in keeping this conversation going to actually contact the EAE Business School or contact us. And of course, this is a conversation that for sure we are continue inside of the MIT Experience program that we have into the International MBA. So anybody interested, please contact us. And thank you, David, for your time. It has been a pleasure.
Great pleasure for me as well. Thank you, Gustavo.